Yes.
So, namaste to all who are joining us today for this international study class of the Theosophical Society in India on the way of the disciple by Clara that has been conducted for the past week by brother Pedro Oliveira and sister Linda Oliveira that join us from Australia. Let us begin coming us together, all together from the different points, physical points that we are just joining here in this common place that we have online by pronouncing the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden love, shining, O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know that they are also one with every other. Well, so today is the fourth session of this study class, and our speaker today is Brother Pedro Oliveira. I know most of us know him plenty and have even had the pleasure to share with him in several occasions. But for those who are joining maybe today by the first time, I'm just going to introduce him briefly before giving the floor to him. So Pedro Oliveira has been a member of the Theosophical Society since 1978. He has held a different number of positions in the Theosophical Society internationally and in Australia, such as International Secretary of the Theosophical Society here at Adyar. He was also the president of the Societies Indo-Pacific Federation, the officer in charge of the editorial office at the international headquarters, the education coordinator of the Australian section, and president of his parent lodge in Brazil. Apart from that work, he is also an author, and he has authored 3 books and several articles, having also lectured extensively for the society at a national and international level. So it is really my honor and my pleasure to be here with all of you today and to introduce Brother Pedro. And now the floor is all yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Catalina. Before we continue with the contents of Miss Clara Cord's book, The Way of the Disciple, we are examining some of them. We can't examine all of them. A question occurred to me that may be relevant, and perhaps we could also exchange some views at the end of this presentation. And that is, what kind of mind do we bring to the study of theosophy? This has been considered a relevant point by a number of theosophical writers, including our early leaders. For example, Madame Blavatsky suggested to her students in London in 1888 that the study of theosophy should be conducted uninfluenced by past studies. In other words, we may have our preferred authors or preferred subjects and so on, but when we come to the study of theosophy, our mind should be focused in that study so that its main principles, so that we may contact its main principles. Dr. Bezan has also a similar advice. She said, when we are studying theosophy and we come across a sentence or a couple of sentences that are very profound, very charged with meaning, we should stop the study and focus on those sentences so that we can contact the underlying truths that those sentences contain. And there are other authors who said something similar. For example, Brother Sri Ram said that we may view theosophy as a doctrine or a teaching, but essentially, theosophy is a living wisdom, which we may not contact if our approach to it is just cerebral or intellectual. So this seems to be an important point. And here I would like to remind us that of the meaning of the word disciple, the original meaning in Latin, and that is a learner. A disciple is someone who is truly learning and not someone who just accumulates knowledge. So this is just a few ideas. Now, I am haunted by the inability to share content from time to time. Let me see if I can do it now. No, I can't. So I will try again. So I'll have to momentarily minimize this. Oh. Are you able to see it? Huh?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Okay. I'll continue.
Don't close it down. I'll go back to the meeting. This is sharing.
No, it's different. So can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Last time we considered the quality of viveka. Sorry, no, we didn't. We are going to consider the quality of viveka today. And the first slide, can you read it?
Yes, Shankaracharya.
So you can read the slide, right?
Yes, sir.
Let me see.
Make it full screen, sir.
Whole screen. Yes, just a moment. Yes. Oh, sorry. So what Miss Clara Cott says, she creates a very useful summing up of how different traditions view the question of viveka, which she translates as insight. Theosophical literature translates it as discrimination, and more modernly as discernment, the capacity to distinguish between what is real from what is unreal. So here she says that according to Sri Shankaracharya, Viveka is discerning the eternal from the transitory, the permanent from the impermanent, as certainty that the material universe is illusory and Brahman the only reality. So you can see that according to Shankaracharya, Viveka goes at a very deep level. It doesn't stay at the level of the mind only, right? So this is one point. In the Buddhist tradition, Viveka means the opening of the doors of the mind. Apparently, that was the title of the first sermon of Lord Buddha in Sarnath when he started his ministry. The opening of the doors of the mind. That implies that until there is Viveka, the doors of the mind are shut. The mind may have some knowledge, it may have some limited understanding, but its doors are shut. Only Viveka can open those doors. In the Christian tradition, this is in the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 7, verse 7, seek and ye shall find. This is the teaching of Jesus to his disciples. Seek and ye shall find. Seek means inquiring, trying to find out, asking questions. These are activities that help the doors of the mind to open up. Then she includes, curiously, a statement from the book of QT, which is mentioned by Madame Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine as one of the sources of the Secret Doctrine, actually. An intuitional perception of one being the vehicle of the manifested Avalokiteshvara, which is translated as the divine Atman. I think this is a commentary by Clara. An intuitional perception of one being the vehicle of the manifested Avalokiteshvara, the divine mind. Avalokiteshvara is the embodiment of boundless compassion. Again, I have to report to the household that I am hearing a cat. And the word Avalokiteshvara, for example, in the Mahatma letters, is translated as the Lord which is seen, Avalokiteshvara, which means it's a spiritual intuitional perception of this divine reality. Then there is a quote from At the Feet of the Master that Miss Cod ascribes to Master K.H. The discrimination between the real and the unreal, which leads men or women to enter the path. So Radhaji once told us at ADR many years ago that we entered the path because we have heard a call. And treading the path means to proceed towards the source of that call and cause it to govern our lives. So that is a deep understanding of what the path is. This source is, of course, one could call the higher self, we could call the monad, we'd call it Atma, Buddhi, and so on. In the Christian tradition, again, St. Paul says But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. It's very interesting that over the centuries, individuals who discover this God within, this inner reality within, were called by their contemporaries foolish or crazy or mad. This applied, for example, to a very profound Sufi teacher, a contemporary of Jalaluddin Rumi. His name was Mansur al-Hallaj. And he was in a public square, and he was in a state of profound mystical union with God. And he said, I am God. And some of the men who were there, considering that blasphemy, they beheaded him. And tradition says that when his head got detached from the body, even then it continued to say, I am God, because it was a very profound experience. And finally, Annie Besant says, discrimination between the one and the many, um, um, life and form, to, sorry, um, I am unable to read the last word after aside. Let me see if I can. To put aside the changing elements in self and others, and strive to see the unchanging in all. She had a way with words, of course. Discrimination between the one and the many. Some authors suggested that the one hides within the many, the multiplicity. Discrimination between life and form. To put aside the changing elements in self and others. Which means if we are identified with the personal self, we cannot understand or perceive our unity with others, and to strive to see the unchanging in all. This is a very important statement in theosophical literature, also in the Sanatana Dharma, if you like. The true self, the Atman, which is essentially the same as Brahman, is unchanging. Whatever changes is subject to time, and that's not real, because time in those traditions is an illusion. Let me see if I can show you the second slide. Hmm. Okay, I'll try to share again. Oh, uh, oh, here. I'm sorry, I'm having a few difficulties here. So, okay, the second quote is from Miss Clara Cord herself. From time immemorial, certain traits of character have been demanded of aspirants by the Great Brotherhood. These were codified by the Lord Buddha and described by his successor, the great teacher Shankaracharya, in his little treatise, The Crest Jewel of Wisdom, Viveka Chudamani. There are 4 great qualifications, and the first is Viveka, often translated as discrimination or the spirit of discernment, but which I will call insight. We don't have much time to consider this, but please consider this in your own studies. Why these great teachers have found necessary to tell their students or any person who wanted to learn from them that there are certain traits of characters that are necessary. We know that in order to acquire knowledge, you don't have to have special traits of characters. You may have only curiosity. But in the case of these great teachers, they require their students to have a certain trait of character. One of them is, for example, service, harmlessness, ahimsa, for example. And this is very important. This seems, the reason behind this, it seems to be, I'm not saying it is, it seems to be that in order to attain to wisdom, the individual needs to have a thorough knowledge of his or her own nature, and therefore, and investigate very thoroughly their motives. This is something that needs to be considered, because if the motive is selfish, the deeper truths of life will remain non-existent to that individual. Let me see if I can show you the third slide. Do you see it?
Yes, yes, now all is visible.
Yes. Can I ask Catalina to read this?
Of course, yes, yes, I will read it. It is clear that unless the mind of a man, even if ever so dimly, can glimpse the goal to be achieved, he will never take any steps towards it. To be able to glimpse it is what I call insight. At the very beginning of the golden stairs, given by the Master Moria to HPB, are placed the words, an open mind, an eager intellect, an unveiled spiritual perception. A mind that is hidebound by prejudices, dogmas, rigid thought forms, probably inculcated in early youth and still holding a man prisoner, can never discern the path to adeptship. He must see before he can take a step in that direction. The soul must be unfettered, the desires free.
Thank you, Catalina. Again, you see the seriousness of approach of a student of the divine wisdom. Yes, it was the master who gave HPB the golden stairs. But what a number of people may not know is that in the Secret Doctrine, she said that the golden stairs was part of the occult catechism of many centuries ago, which was placed in the hands of students of esoteric wisdom who needed to learn those principles. And of course, she was instructed to use that with her students. But as Catalina has read, the very three principles at the beginning of the golden stairs, an open mind, an eager intellect, an unveiled spiritual perception, point to a mind that is not enclosed in itself, that is a mind which is learning in a real sense, a mind which has become sensitive to these teachings, a mind which realizes that these teachings lead to self-transformation. And of course, if the approach to these principles is merely intellectual, many years will pass and nothing will happen in the life of that student. But he or she cannot blame the teachers, the masters, because his or her approach probably was limited. Let me proceed. The authoritative dogmas of a church have no place here. There is only one to whom the aspirant must be entirely faithful, whose leading he must follow unconditionally and wholeheartedly. He can but hear it, and that is the voice of his interior divinity, the doorway to that which the voice of the silence calls Alaya, the master soul, the universal soul. Again, it shows that a sensitive attitude towards the teaching can take the student very far on this path. But consider the words that she uses: entirely faithful, whose leading he must follow unconditionally and wholeheartedly. At the feet of the master, it is said that the disciple or the student needs to pay attention to what the master says, because he doesn't speak twice. And this has created a certain confusion in some students, but it was explained by both Dr. Bezan and C.W. Leadbeater in their book, Talks on the Path of Occultism, Volume 1, that if the disciple is not really prepared inwardly, the master may say something of profound significance and it will just go unnoticed. And it's not just possible for the disciple to say, please, master, repeat yourself, because that's not how this kind of tradition works. One has to bring to these teachings, as we were saying in the beginning, one has to bring to these teachings a mind which is not just open, but very attentive, and listen to the teachings very profoundly. That's why in the Indian tradition, and I believe the Upanishads refer to it, the question was asked, how can the Atman be known? How can the self be known? And the reply was, through Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. That is, listening, pondering or reflection, and repeated meditation. Because these teachings can simply not be absorbed or even approached by a superficial mind. They won't make any sense to it. we will proceed, and within minutes we will change from Viveka to Vairagya. There are too many things to consider, but we'll try our best. Can I ask Brother Umakant Rao to read this? If he is there. Probably he is not there. So I will ask
But
sis.
to be
Hello?
able to, I am reading now.
Oh, you are reading. Whenever you are ready, can you please read it aloud?
Yeah, I will try. But to be able to hear it and not to mistake the voice of his own passions, desires, and wish fulfillments for the divine mandate, that is the point. If once the voice speaks and we have heard, we must be utterly faithful, or it will not speak again. But it may be asked, should not the aspirant obey the master? Very rarely does an adept give a direct order. Learn, wrote the master KH to Mr. Sinnett, to be loyal to the idea rather than to my poor self.
Thank you. Yes, it's another very important passage, and you see the same spirit, the same thread goes through it. First of all, that in order to hear this inner voice, one should not mistake it for the voice of our own passions or desires, opinions, or wish fulfillments. And that is very common. It is said that an individual who is opinionated only listens to his own voice and to his own thoughts. That's why Winston Churchill said, in his definition of a fanatic, he said that a fanatic is someone who keeps saying the same thing, and he never changed his mind. Unfortunately, the world is suffering nowadays of many people whose opinionatedness can create social disturbance and danger for others. Later on, it's said that the master said, instructed Mr. Sinnett to be loyal to the idea rather than my poor self. The idea, you see, the word idea is capitalized there. So it may be a synonym for the teaching or the wisdom, if you like, or the wisdom tradition. And rather than his poor self, in other words, he was trying to convey to Mr. Sinnett that he should investigate these teachings, understand them, understand the role of the society in the dissemination of these teachings, rather than making the teacher himself an authority. So these are all the different views of Vairagya. Now, we have to move a little bit faster, and I'm skipping quite a number of quotes until we reach Vairagya, which Miss Clara Cord defines as the balance between the pairs of opposites. So the first quote is, according to Sri Shankaracharya, vairagya is indifference to the fruits of action, both here and hereafter. There is an omission there. Indifference to the fruits of action, both here and hereafter. Which the implication seems that even when we depart from this world, we have to keep practicing vairagya. Because according to some clairvoyants, when you are on a different plane of consciousness, you will see many forms, but most of them are unreal. And you have to continue to pay attention. In the Buddhist teaching, vairagya is preparation for action. So before we indulge in action, we need to prepare ourselves through vairagya, or indifference to the fruits of action. Ms. Scott also includes the book of QT, Calm Indifference to, but a just appreciation of everything that constitutes the objective and transitory world in relation with and to the invisible world. The keynote is calm indifference. If we get emotionally involved in any circumstance, we lose our perception. We lose our capacity to understand. And as at the feet of the Master says so brilliantly, your emotions are not yourself. I had one of the greatest privilege of working at IDR many, many years ago was being the neighbor of Mrs. Norma Shastri. Some of you may remember her. And I saw a visitor complaining to her literally about everything in Ledvita Chambers, from bed sheets, pillowcases, food, mattress, and so on, shower, everything. And Norma listened to his complaints, and she said she would convey them to the administration of the compound. Later that day, I went to visit her, and I said I was very impressed with the way you dealt with that individual who complained literally about everything. And then she gave me one of the keys of vairagya. She had developed that in her own person. She said, I am responsible to my own emotions. Other people's emotions are not my business. So there is a profound wisdom there from a lady who devoted her life to the TS, who was the mother of all animals in the compound, who helped many visitors personally in many ways. She had developed this capacity to discern between her own emotional responses and other people's responses. The Christian tradition mentions, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I have seen complaints over the years. Why use the expression poor in spirit? Of course, these are people who wanted to edit the gospel and basically saying Jesus should know better. But the expression poor in spirit is profoundly meaningful. And many Christian mystics explore that. To be poor in spirit means that you don't retain anything to yourself from any experience, from social exchanges. You just maintain your consciousness pure and simple. Again, the Master KH, the first requisite in even a simple fakir is that he should have trained himself to remain as indifferent to moral pain as to physical suffering. Obviously, this is not for beginners. Some of us may think that this is an ideal which is too far out for us to practice. But this is what he said, that the indifference to moral pain as to physical suffering. How many of us would be able to endure the personal attacks that Madame Blavatsky, C.W. Leadbeater, and Annie Besant suffered during their lifetime? They were literally trashed by the media, by other people, and they kept on working. They didn't succumb to that. I read once in my research about Mr. Leadbeater's life that somebody said to him, Mr. Leadbeater, these people are saying horrible things about you. Don't they upset you? He said, they could if I thought about them, but I don't. So he wouldn't engage in that kind of attack. Finally, the imitation of Christ, blessed are the single-hearted, for they shall have much peace, because they made it their study of to mortify in themselves all earthly desires. They are enabled to cleave with the whole marrow of their hearts to God. In other words, only if you practice this kind of detachment, you can have full dedication to the divine reality, the work that the great ones do for the benefit of the world. Can I ask Brother Pradip Mahapatra to read this quote? If he is
Yes,
there.
sir. Yes. I am ready.
Very good.
Vairagya is sometimes called divine indifference. It means the ability to stand serene and steady under all circumstances, because the soul is becoming identified with the immortal one within, which is unaffected by the vicissitudes of life, as the Uttara Gita tells us. My favorite simile is the rock of ages within. It remains steady and unmoved while the waves of passing circumstances sweep over it. Sometimes it is submerged, but it appears again, cleansed and washed.
Thank you, sir. Yes. So Miss Cord says that sometimes Vairagya is called divine indifference, which means it's a form of indifference which is not callous or cold, but it doesn't get involved in the process of experience. Mr. Krishnamurti also commented on this. Normally, when we are immersed in experience, we identify ourselves with them, those which are positive, so-called positive, those which are so-called negative. But he said, but when we identify ourselves with them, we can't learn from them. We can't understand what they mean. And this applies to many other traditions. And then she says, it also means the ability to stand serene and steady under all circumstances, because the soul is becoming identified with the immortal one, within which is unaffected, immortal one within, which is unaffected by the vicissitudes of life, as the Uttara Gita tell us. And this seems to be the mark of every great teacher. When Jesus was brought to the presence of Pontius Pilate before his crucifixion, Pontius Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" Just imagine asking this of a man who had become a prisoner and who had already been beaten up by the centurions in Palestine. Jesus didn't say anything, remained silent. And then Pilate threatened him and said, "Do you know that I have the power to throw you to that mob and they will crucify you?" And then Jesus spoke to him, "You have no power over me." He could arrest him. He could have his body tortured. He could have him crucified, but he didn't have power over who he was. And then she said that her favorite simile for Vairagya is the rock of ages, the ultimate symbol of stability that nothing can affect. It remains steady and unmoved while the waves of passing circumstances sweep over. Sometimes it's submerged, but it appears again cleansed and washed. And Brother Sri Ram said in his own wisdom that there is a way of meeting experiences in which the consciousness remains pure, unaffected, harmonious. But that only happens if the conscious has been completely awakened by alertness, mindfulness, and similar activities. May I ask Brother Ganesh Kumar to read this quote? If he is still there.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Everything in the universe returns unto itself. That is why the most complete symbol is the circle. Even a planet, even a universe is subject to this eternal cyclic law. So, on the pilgrimage of the soul, there are two great arcs, as Plato calls them, or in the language of the East, the path of forthgoing, the Pravritti Marga, and the path of return, the Nivritti Marga. Upon the path of foregoing, the undeveloped, nescient, innocent spark of divinity eats of the tree of the knowledge of good, not evil. Or again, in the words of the East, comes under the play of the pairs of opposites. By this method, the dominant faculties of the soul are slowly awakened and drawn out, but he becomes self-conscious and self-motivated.
Thank you. And Dr. Besant, in a number of her writings, particularly the little book called The Laws of the Higher Life, which is highly recommended, she talks about Pravritti Marga, the path of forthgoing, and Nivritti Marga, the path of return. And she says that the keynote of Pravritti Marga is to take. During that journey of consciousness, consciousness evolved by taking things, appropriating things. The sensory input is one of taking. But in the path of return, the keynote is to give, to share. And she illustrates this by saying that the pivotal point of this teaching is when the Pravritti Marga path comes to an end and the Nivritti Marga path starts to begin. And she said the pivotal point is that the individual who is at a very inflection point finds it very hard because he has not fully given his back to the Pravritti Marga, nor established himself or herself in Nivritti Marga. And then she quotes, in explaining this, she quotes the parable of the prodigal son. And that is, it's a biblical parable. There is this very wealthy man who has two sons. One of them decides to go on a journey to discover himself. The other son remains with him in his household. Further down the journey, the son loses all his wealth. He loses all his resources. And at the very bottom of his journey, he finds himself struggling with pigs for food. And at that moment, he thinks to himself, I don't need to do this. I have a home. And then he starts the journey of returning home. And then his father welcomes him and gives a party for his return. And the son who stays with him complains, saying, but I stayed here helping you and he abandoned you. And the father instructs the son, saying, no, this son of mine was lost, but now is found. And Dr. Besant suggests something similar. She said, we sometimes get lost in the process of experience, that we lose the knowledge of who we are. And we need this discipline of vairagya to leave experiences behind, or to attribute to them only their due value. May I ask Linda to read this quote? She's probably busy, so I'll read it. This is why I have called vairagya the balance between the pairs of opposites. It can only be achieved by fixing the soul's gaze upon the immortal one within, the state wherein there is neither reward nor punishment. Learn now that there is no cure for desire, no cure for love of reward, no cure for the misery of longing, save in the fixing the sight and the hearing upon that which that is invisible and soundless. That is from Light on the Path. And this is a statement by Miss Clara Cord, of course. This state, according to her, is one wherein there is neither reward nor punishment. These are normal features of human experience. And under the karmic law, they do happen very often. But it has been said that someone who begins to thread the path rearranges his prarabdha karma, so to speak, or his or her prarabdha karma is rearranged for them. And then instead of waiting for several incarnations for this process of reward and punishment to take place, sometimes they may take place in one incarnation. And then the light on the path is very eloquent and poetic. Learn now that there is no cure for desire, no cure for love of reward, no cure for the misery of longing, saving the fixing of the sight and the hearing upon that which is invisible and soundless. It is a very human experience, the so-called the misery of longing. I have a friend, I haven't heard from that friend. Has he broken up friendship with me? Is he sick? What is happening? And this can cause, of course, emotional upheavals in a person. And also the love of reward. Dr. Besson said, whatever you have to do, put your heart into it. Do it to the best of your ability. The moment you have accomplished that task, forget about it. Don't go back and agitate it and say, I could have done it better. Will I be recognized? And these are all extensions, one would say, tentacles of the personal self, the love of reward, the misery of longing, as we mentioned as well. And finally, she mentions the Gita saying, affection and aversion for the objects of sense abide in the senses. Let none come under the domination of these two. They are obstructors from the path. These are the pairs of opposites. The Gita fully acknowledges them. It does say that they exist, but it does say that the yogi rises above them. How? By a very important term in the Bhagavad Gita, sthita prajna, a stable mind. I once asked Radhaji at IDR, I am studying the Gita, and then there is this expression, sthita prajna, and I can see that the word prajna may mean mind or consciousness or understanding, but what is your definition of sthita? She looked at me and she said, immovable. It is an understanding that can survive many troubles, many crises. It is a very stable understanding. And finally, that which brings us under the rule of the pairs of opposites is personal desire for results or personal fear for them. So the Gita tells the disciple, thy business is with the action only, never with its fruits. The Chela does that which is right to do, regardless of the results to himself. And yes, this is one of the emblematic teachings of the Gita. Thy business is with action only, never with the results. And Sri Shankaracharya says the same thing. he said in Vivekachudamani, action is for the purification of the mind. Finally, and I apologize for quoting her so many times, but I had the privilege of working with her. Radhaji shared with me the draft of a letter she was writing to a member who was causing disturbance in his area. And she said that the only reason we are on this world is to purify our minds. Probably because a purified mind will have a different understanding, and that different understanding may cause a profound change in the nature of the mind, and that mind becomes a beneficent force in nature. Thank you. And apologize for the technical problems. It is part of my prarabdha karma.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Pedro, for such an inspiring and I mean, we feel like this desire to apply everything you said to the practical life, and I guess that is a very important point whenever we talk about theosophy. Thank you very much. And now, yeah. And now we are open for some questions, comments, if someone has, whether you can unmute yourselves or write them in the chat. We have around 10 more minutes for that. Let's take this opportunity that we have Brother Pedro here to go deeper in what we has taught us today. Yeah, Yashay is telling us, thank you, sir, for the knowledge. Just put us in a state of meditation that we need to introspect a little bit after listening to you, because that's how I am feeling personally.
It could also be a state of boredom.
We never know, but at least I am feeling I was taking some notes that I will go through later, because really you touch very important points. But
I'd like to know something about Brahma. What is actually Brahma?
Yes. I think I'll have to send a WhatsApp message to Sri Shankaracharya because I am unable to reply. The texts basically say it is one without a second. In Brahman, there is no division. And one of the Upanishads says that Brahman is one. Those who see diversity and division, they go from death to death. That they never realize the significance of life. So, and another very important point that the Upanishads declare, that the individual who attains a knowledge of Atman discovers simultaneously, timelessly, that Atman is Brahman.
Our own soul is Brahma.
Sorry?
Our own soul is Brahma.
Yes, that according to the Upanishads, the individual who discovers that his or her own fundamental identity is Atma discovers also timelessly, almost at the same time, that Atman is not only his true self, that Atman is one with Brahman. So that individual becomes a Jivan Mukta. I'm sorry to mention again, I asked Radhaji, what is your definition of Jivan Mukta? She said, the word Jiva means light. The word Mukta means freedom. A Jivan Mukta is a liberated life.
Yes, sir.
in that person, the divine life has been completely liberated.
Once you are lighted inside, you are completely liberated.
Yes.
Thank you, sir, for the explanation.
Thank you. I'm not going to charge anything for this.
Thank you, Brother Pedro. Please give
Thank you,
our
sir.
regards to all in Australia. Sinu Master here.
Thank you.
Brother Jitendra Sampath is saying Brahman means ever expanding mind.
Yes. There are many ways of defining it. I see Professor Shinde here. Salutations from Sydney.
Thank you, Pedro. I am enjoying your explanations. Really, very inspiring. And even Prajnanam Brahma is the statement. Prajnanam Brahma. That is Prajna, intuition.
Yes.
Yeah, that is also one of the statement.
Yes.
Thank you, Pedro. Very nicely you explained.
Thank you. Somebody pointed out to me, of course, I don't know Hindi, but in some of the Hindi couplets of Saint Kabir, the same realization is there, that he would feel that he had found not only his true self, but the very heart of the universe. And he was a simple man. He was not a scholar.
One more comment here from Brother Ganesh Kumar. Satyam Jnanam Anatam is Brahma.
Thank you.
If somebody else wants to add something, Brother Pradeep Mahapatra, do you want to add something before we close today's session? Or
No. Even you noticed me.
sorry?
I don't like to add anything. It is very profound. And so if there is nothing to add from any other side, we can close the session.
Okay, so we will proceed to close today's session. Thanking mainly Brother Pedro for sharing with us so generously and in a very simple yet very deep way all this knowledge that has given us a lot of food for thought. And thanks to all the attendees today that were gathered here. I'm sure in the invisible planes, all this energy is getting together, no matter from where we are in this earth. So the invitation is for all of us to join us tomorrow. Sister Linda Oliveira will be the one in charge of tomorrow's sessions. We will meet here at the same time, the same channel with the same link Zoom link, and have a great day ahead and see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brother Pradeep, and to all of you.
And give our best wishes to Shikar and to your daughter.
Thank you. I will convey for sure.
One announcement that is from Ukraine. She invited through online to attend today's program at around 6 Kiev time. Brother Tim Bird is the chief speaker, and they are celebrating the birthday of Blavatsky in her birthplace. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it is at 8:30 p.m. Indian time.
8:30 p.m. Indian time.
Yes.
Kiev time 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.